on to our next topic, one of my favorite ones. Wearing a crown and full ceremonial dress, Britain's Queen Elizabeth presented her subjects yesterday. I almost feel like speaking a British accent. Presented her subjects yesterday with the new government's legislative plan for the next year, delivering the 62nd Queen's speech of her reign. That's 62 years of reign. In a bizarre tradition dating back to times of hostility between Parliament and monarchy, an MP was held hostage at Buckingham Palace until she returned safely. Seriously. With me in studio.
Really?
I love them.
No,
I know, exactly. With me in studio is I-24 News senior editor Ruthie Sinai, and joining us via Skype to be held accountable for all of this is, of course, I-24 News European correspondent Jonathan Sacerdoti. I know you take this very seriously, but let's begin with seriously, somebody was held hostage, quote unquote. Jonathan.
Oh, yes. Well, this is obviously, as you say, quite an old tradition, and this is officially the state opening of Parliament, in which the Queen comes to the Palace of Westminster and delivers a speech which is written for her by the new government, explaining what legislation they hope to enact during the coming year. This Queen, of course, will become the longest-serving British monarch on the 9th of September of this year, beating the record of Queen Victoria, her great-great-grandmother, who ruled for 63 years and 7 months. But this was our Queen, our current Queen's first Conservative-only Queen speech for nearly 20 years, which is what makes it so notable. And she spoke on various different things that David Cameron had promised in his election campaign. And during the run-up to that, there were many issues which were centre stage. We can hear now that the Queen spoke about various of these. Let's take a look here at the first clip just to see what she was focusing on.
Okay.
My government will renegotiate the United Kingdom's relationship with the European Union and pursue reform of the European Union for the benefit of all member states. Alongside this, early legislation will be introduced to provide for an in-out referendum on membership of the European Union before the end of 2017.
Okay, wait, Jonathan, wait. So, I know, no, I'm not making fun of this. It's just, I love that crown. It looks terribly heavy. I do want to ask, though, because I think Ruthie and I are wondering, and this before we continue, is this like the first shot out of the gate when it comes to getting out of the EU?
Well, this is important because what we heard there is a referendum before the end of 2017, which many are now reading to mean sometime during 2016, go figure. But the truth of the matter is that this shows an absolute commitment to a promise that was made during the run-up to the election by David Cameron. And when I say the run-up, I mean several years run-up. This is something that has been on the cards for a long time. And an entire generation of British people have not had a chance to have their say on membership of the European Union since the last time was during the 70s, which means that this is very important, not just for the nation, but also for David Cameron and his Conservative Party, not all of whom agree on this issue. David Cameron himself, and you'll have heard the words there in that extract from the Queen's speech, would like reform of Britain's relationship with Europe so that he can then campaign to stay in Europe. But that is not necessarily what will be the outcome of a referendum.
True. And hold on, Jonathan, staying with us, Ruthie, I'm wondering with you, because this seems to have been in the cards leading up from, as Jonathan just mentioned, the elections in Britain, and now the Queen echoing it. What does this, let's say this happens, okay, what does this do to the EU? It's done. Or is it?
Well, no, I don't think it's done. And I think, there's going to be an EU summit in Brussels next month. And basically the French and the Germans have already colluded to reject this whole notion that Cameron is trying to promote of reopening the Lisbon Treaty, the basic treaty of the EU, in order to make changes. So, I don't know. I mean, if the British people go in one direction and the French and Germans go in another, it's a very big question. But if I may, though, I would like to get back to this Queen's speech, because the subject at hand. So, first of all, she does not look very happy. She looks like she's either got knee pains or gout or some royal things. Secondly, since the speech was written for her, a lot of these things didn't necessarily trip off her tongue, like psychedelic substances. Trip, right. Psychedelic, you get it? Okay.
Yes,
then,
yes.
Okay. Then one really wonders, some commentator wrote that Prince Charles, the heir apparent, of course, who was sitting next to her, looked like he was the driver of a getaway car, couldn't wait to get away, and on and on. I really wonder, I mean, this, obviously pomp and circumstance, and the Brits love it, and we all love it, but...
No, and there's one, and Jonathan, because you were with us, and I said that you were, I wonder myself, and I know it's part of a tradition, and people would also argue that the Middle East has some very bizarre traditions that involve a lot of death. But there was one line, I think the second line was it, in the Queen's speech. Measures will also be brought forward to promote social cohesion.
Yeah. Cohesion.
Yes, unsurprisingly.
This is a word she uses every day.
She does? Cohesion? What does that mean?
Well, unsurprisingly, Europe wasn't the only conservative policy that made its way into this conservative-only Queen's speech. And as you say, the speech is always written for the Queen to read by the government. So it was full of jargon that came out of their election campaign book. And when she spoke of the issue of tackling extremism at home, as well as drugs laws, psychotropic drugs and the like, these were unusual things to hear coming out of the mouth of the Queen, but they were indicative of what should be coming legislatively during the coming year. We can take a little look at that as well, I think.
It's the agenda for the coming year, yeah.
It's the agenda for the coming year, which goes hand in hand when it goes hand in hand actually with the party that was elected also in many ways.
Of course. Yeah. This is, as Jonathan mentioned.
Yeah, I want to hear her say it.
Since John Major stepped down.
But let's hear I want to hear about cohesion. Let's take a listen.
Measures will also be brought forward to promote social cohesion and protect people by tackling extremism. New legislation will modernize the law on communications data, improve the law on policing and criminal justice, and ban the new generation of psychoactive drugs. My government will bring forward proposals for a British Bill of Rights.
I'm Jonathan, I'm putting you on the spot again, and I'm not making light of this, but somebody has to explain to me, what are psychoactive drugs?
So the psychoactive drugs section refers to something that has been ongoing here about a range of drugs called legal highs. These are drugs that are synthetic or chemical and have been created over the years since the drugs legislation existed, meaning that they're not technically illegal if sold for certain purposes. So it shows a commitment from the government to clamping down on those sorts of things to protect especially children and young people's health. And the other thing she mentioned there to do with social cohesion and the like is referring really to the laws that the government wishes to put in place so that it can listen more to people's communications, read more of their data, what has been known as the Snoopers Charter, so that the government has more power to catch terrorists and extremists within the UK, perhaps even banning some of them from publication of extremist views online or in speeches. And this is, again, very controversial legislation here because people see it as potentially challenging their human rights within the country.
Yeah, sadly, all we have is a second left. But Jonathan, that's actually quite interesting when it comes to internal politics in the UK. I want to thank you all for being with me this morning. When we get back.